Okay, Naya, go ahead. Whoa, 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 whoa. You're distributing. What's 4 times negative 1? Yeah. Distributing is multiplying. And then plus 3, yeah. What? At the end of class. Because we got to review. Yeah. Well, I'll write you a pass. Okay, that is correct. Okay, and I'm going to quickly go over what she did. Okay, she saw that to get from one term to the next, you had to add 4. So that's how she got D equals 4. Then to write the rule, she also knows you have to know the first term, and the first term is 3. The rule is A sub n equals D times n minus 1 plus A sub 1. It's over there on the whiteboard in case you don't know it. All you have to do is plug in your D, which is 4, multiply it by n minus 1, which we'll get to in a second, and then add your first term, 3. Now you distribute, and distributing is multiplication, so it becomes 4n minus 4, then plus 3, which simplifies to 4n minus 1. Now remember yesterday I pointed out a shortcut method. Okay, this is very helpful on the test to save time. The shortcut method is basically A sub n equals your D value times n plus your 0th term. Okay, now let's talk about what I mean by that. Everybody knows what the D is. The D is 4 because they're adding 4. That number should always sit right beside the n. The 0th term is if you were to go backwards. Look, we know 3 is the first term, so 7 is the second term, and then so on. So the 0th term would be if you went backwards. Well, if you're going up 4 this way, to go backwards, you got to go down 4. And 3 minus 4 is negative 1, which is where that came from. Okay, so this number is always the common difference. This number is always the 0th term. Not the first term, but the 0th term. Then once you have your explicit formula, you can simply, plug in 10, because that's the term they wanted. 4 times 10 minus 1 is where she got 39. Okay, now you need to get out your review sheet, and we're going to go over that. It's what the sub gave you Monday while I was out. Says, which of the following are linear functions? They give you 6 different choices, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and they want to know which ones are linear. Circle all that apply, meaning there could be more than one right answer. Okay, it'll be like that on the test tomorrow. You will bubble every one that is linear. Okay, whenever the information is given to you in table form, to determine if it's linear, you just look for a pattern in the table. Like look at the X column. Okay, everybody pay attention. The X's are doing what every time? Right, you're adding 1 to get from one X value to the next. What about the Y values? They're adding 3. Are they doing it every time? That's called a constant rate of change because they increase by the same number every time. So this one is linear, so I'm going to circle it. Now this is just something extra. You don't have to do what I'm about to do, but those numbers are your slope. Remember in the slope formula, look over at the whiteboard. The Y's are on top, the X's are on bottom. Well, the Y's are increasing by 3, so that's your top number, your rise. And the x's are increasing by 1, so that's your run. If you were to graph this line, it would have a slope of up 3 over 1. Okay, now let's look at B. What are the x's doing to get from 1 to the next? They're also going up by 1. Now let's look at the y's. To get from 2 to 4, you go up by 2. To get from 4 to 8, you go up by 4. Okay? So that is not linear. Okay? Linear has a constant rate of change, which means it would go up by the exact same thing every time, or it could be going down by the same thing every time. So this one's not linear. Okay? C. This is the same thing, except for they didn't give it to you as a table. They gave it to you as a list of ordered pairs. So first look at the x values. Marcus, the test is tomorrow. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So what did the x values do every time? Correct. And the x's go on the bottom, so your run is 2. Now look at the y values. 7, 5, 3, 1, negative 1. Right, and they did it every time. So the slope of this would be negative 2 over 2 or just negative 1, and that's linear because it did the exact same thing every time for the x's and the y's. Okay, it's called a constant rate of change, constant slope. Now for D, the x's are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was that constant? Yes. Now let's look at the y's. Negative 2, negative 5, 0, negative 5, negative 10. No. Okay, because first you're at negative 10, then you're at negative 5, then 0, but then you go back to negative 5 and negative 10. So first you're adding by 5, but then you're subtracting by 5, so that is not constant. All right, then the graphs are the easiest. Is this graph linear? Definitely. Is this one linear? No. So on tomorrow's test, like this is what this one looked like. It'd have number 1, A through F, and then those are all bubbles. And you would just bubble in your answers. So like the ones that were linear today were A, C, and E. So tomorrow you would bubble in the A, the C, and the E. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's go to number 2. Write an equation to describe the linear function below. Now, normally when we write an equation of the line, we do it in y equals mx plus b form, correct? They're just choosing to use f of x instead of y. It's the same thing. You're still doing it in mx plus b form. Well, to be able to do that, we need to know what? Correct. The slope and the y-intercept. What's the easiest one to find? The y-intercept, because it's where it crosses the y-axis, which is at 3. So your y-intercept's 3, so we already know this is going to end with a plus 3. How do we find the slope? Rise over run. So you do have to find another point somewhere on the graph, maybe that one or maybe that one. It doesn't matter. If you go from one point to the next, you rise 1, 2, 3, and you run 2. Had you gone from the y-intercept up to that point, you would have rose 1, 2, 3, and run 2. So the slope is 3 over 2, and that always goes right before the x. So that is your equation for that linear function. That one tomorrow is a free response question. You will not have choices. You'll have to know how to write out the equation of y equals mx plus b form. All right, number 3. I can't remember, honestly. No. Below is a table of a partial set of values of the linear function g of x. Okay, so they give us a table, and they want to know the slope of the line. How do you calculate the slope when you're given a table of values? Correct. That's the slope formula. And to use that formula, you have to have what? What? Points. 2 points. So which 2 points do you want to use? Okay. Okay. So if we're using 0, negative 5, and 3, negative 3. This was the first point y'all named, so we'll call it x1, y1. This was the second point, so we'll call it x2, y2. And now we just plug them in where they go. M equals, I'm going to go ahead and put the fraction bar, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the minuses. Now all I have to do is plug in the numbers. What's y2? What's y1? Negative 5, but yes, a minus a negative will become a positive. What's x2? And what's x1? So the numerator becomes negative 3 plus 5, which is, and the denominator becomes 3 minus 0, which is 3, so that's B. Now let me show you another way you could have done this that would even be faster, but only do it this way if you are very confident. X's. Negative 3 to 0 is plus 3, correct? 0 to 3 is plus 3. 3 to 6 is plus 3. 6 to 9 is plus 3. So all the x's are increasing by 3's. For the y's, negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. And negative 1 plus 2 is 1. So all of the y's are increasing by 2's. And didn't we talk about a while ago how the y's going to the top, they're your rise, and the x's going to the bottom, they're your run? So rise over run, 2 over 3, which is the same thing. It is easier, but my fear is people will accidentally put something like 3 over 2. You've got to remember, if you're looking at the pattern, that the y number goes on top because y's are on top in the formula. And the x goes on bottom because they're in the bottom. Yeah, that's fine if you do it that way, but make sure the y, the rate of change for the y's goes over the rate of change for the x. Okay, number 4. The graph below shows the distance Anna drove on the first day of vacation. What was her average rate of change between hour 2 and hour 6? Okay, so the question is asking, what was her average rate of change? And average rate of change is the same thing as slope, right? So to figure this out, we're going to have to use the slope formula. Okay, and like we said in the previous question, to use this formula, you have to have what? 2 points. 2 points. Now, you can't just choose any points that you would like. They gave you the points you have to use. What did they tell you? Correct. Hour 2 and hour 6. Hour 2 is right here. Hour 6 is right here. If you go to hour 2 and you go up to where the graph is, that's 2 comma what? 100. And then if you go over to hour 6 and go up to the graph, that's 6 comma 150. Now all you do is plug it in the slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Yes. What number will go in the y2? What number will go in the y1? What number will go in the x2? And then the x1? What's 150 minus 100? And what is 6 minus 2? You would not believe how many people circled C last year. But guys, is 50 over 4 50? Yeah, you got to do the whole thing because the bottom does not end up 1. 50 divided by 4 is what? 12.5. Make sure you divide that in your calculator. Yes? Yes, I was about to suggest that. All right, number 5. Julie makes necklaces and sells them to raise money for summer camp. She spent $55 buying supplies to make the necklaces. She sells each necklace for $10. Choose all the sets below that could not represent the domain. Now, I'm going to change up this problem, okay? So I want you to mark out these words. Mark out the word all. Mark out the word not. And then on the word set, just mark out the S. Just leave it set, singular. Okay, so now it says choose the set below that could represent the domain in this situation? Well, when you hear the word domain, you first think about x values. But you've got to know what the x values are in this scenario. Can anybody write the equation in slope-intercept form for this scenario? Okay, Naya. Minus 55 because that money's already spent, so she's already subtracted it from her earnings. Now, this comes from $10 per necklace. So X is necklaces. So now let's reread the question. Choose the set below that could represent necklaces in this situation. Well, look at this set. Can you have -2 necklaces sold? No. Can you have 0.5 necklaces sold? No. Can you have 0 necklaces sold? Yes. You might not sell any, or you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C is correct. Just cross out D. It was a typo to begin with. Okay, D is just a typo to begin with. C is the correct answer. You could sell 0 necklaces. You could sell 1. You could sell 2, 3, 4, 5, up. It was a typo. Right, so if you were doing it according to the question or before I marked out stuff, A and B would have been the right answers. All right, number 6. Which inequality best represents the domain of the function shown in the graph? Okay, they are choosing to write domain in a different way than we are used to writing it. Let's write it the way I've been teaching you. Domain is talking about the what? The x values. Okay? And when you're doing the domain, we're talking about left to right because the x-axis runs left to right. So how far does this graph go over to the left? -3. How far does it go to the right? 5. And then there's endpoints, meaning it does not go any further left or any further right, and we do brackets for that. Okay, but they didn't write it like that. They wrote it with inequality symbols. Well, by common sense, we now can cross out A and B. Because 2 and 4 were how low it went and how high it went, but that's range. We're talking about domain right now. It went from -3 to 5. Remember back when we did number lines and you would have like a number and it was circled and then you would draw this? If it was an open circle, it was a less than or greater than sign. If it was a closed circle, it had an equal to bar under it. So what do you think this is going to be? C. Okay, because those are closed. They're endpoints. There's no open circle there. Yes. All right, number 7. Which inequality best describes the range of the function shown in the graph? Okay, when you hear the word range, you know we're talking about y values. So look over here at your choices. Why would they have an x if we're talking about range? Cross out A and D. Now, see how this graph starts right here at -2 on the y-axis, and then from there, every point would be above -2? What would that be? Y is less than or equal to -2, or y is greater than or equal to -2? Greater than. Every single y value that you could ever plot on this line would have a y value greater than or equal to -2, which is what C says. Okay, number 8. Turn around, pay attention. Which best describes the range? So again, we're talking about y values, so that eliminates D. Now, see how every part of this graph, this upside down V, is at -2 on the y-axis or below? Wouldn't that be everything less than or equal to -2? So B. All right, number 9. Using the graph below, identify the following characteristics. We have a line, and it has arrows, meaning it goes forever in both directions. So what's your domain? Right. all real numbers, which is negative infinity to positive infinity. What about the range? Correct. It goes down forever and it goes up forever. What is the x-intercept? 0. And what's the y-intercept? 0, 3. Okay, end behavior. As x approaches infinity. Okay, we all know that the x-axis is the horizontal axis, which runs two directions. It runs left and it runs right. On the left side are where all your negative numbers are, and on the right side is where all of your positive numbers are. So if it says x approaches positive infinity, they're talking about this side of the x-axis, correct? Which is this part of the line. And that part of the line is doing what? Going up forever. Okay, now it says x approaches negative infinity, which on the x-axis you go to the negative side, which is this part of the line, and it's going down forever. I don't know how I can make that any easier. Like, that is easy. Okay? You're basically just saying, if you go on the right side of the line, it's going up. If you go to the left side of the line, you're going down. Number 10. This is the same question as above. The x-intercept's at negative 2, 0. The y-intercept's at 0, 3. Okay, number 11. Can somebody get the door, please? Identify the maximum and the minimum from the graph. Okay? What is the maximum, the highest point on this graph? Oh, sorry. What is the maximum point on this graph? None, because it has an arrow, which means it goes up forever, so you would never have a highest point. It keeps getting higher and higher and higher. So if the maximum's none, you mark off C and D. What is the minimum? Right. You've got to be careful on this tomorrow, because I remember last year a lot of people were rushing and probably just circled A. Whenever you're plotting a point, you always put the x value first and the y value second. On the x-axis, you go left 1, so that number's first. On the y-axis, you go down 2, so negative 2 is second. Okay, next page, number 13. Which function has a domain of only positive x values? Positive values. What does domain mean? X. So the question is basically saying, out of these three functions, I did? Oh, sorry. Number 12. Which function, if any, has a constant rate of change? Okay, well look, all of the x's are the same, so don't even pay attention to those. They all increase by 1 every time for all three functions. For this one, you're going down 4, down 8, down 16, down 32, so that's not a constant rate of change. For this one, you're going up 7, but then up 6. And then up 5. So that's not a constant rate of change. For this one, you're going up 6, up 6, up 6, up 6. So function E is a constant rate of change. Okay, basically, when they're asking for a constant rate of change, they're asking for which one of these is linear. Okay, and it'd be the one that does the exact same thing every time. So like the slope for this one would have been 6 over 1, because it's going up 6 in the y's, up 1 in the x's. All right, back to number 13. Which function has a domain of only positive values? Well, domain is x values, so they want to know which one of these functions has only positive x values. Well, does function 1 have only positive x values? No, there's 2 negative x values sitting right there, so A is out. Look at graph 2. Are there only positive x values? No, every single thing on this side of the line would have a negative x value, so B's out. Kate paints pictures on a regular basis. She has made 3 paintings in February and plans to paint 1 more each month. So what would the x be here? No. Paintings. Paintings. Like in this scenario, kind of like it was necklaces in the other, it would be paintings. The equation would be y equals 1 per month, so 1 per month, plus the 3 she already did in February. So x represents paintings. Are you ever going to paint a negative amount of paintings? No. So this is the one where the domain would only be positive values. It's still not negative paintings. Okay, number 14. Given the partial set of values of the linear functions f of x and g of x, we're going to find the rate of change. Remind me what rate of change is the same as? Slope. So when you're given a table, how do you find the slope? Okay, so, or you can look at the pattern. But since I'm pretty confident people can look at the pattern, let's do the slope formula. What 2 points do you want to use? I'm going to use 0, 6, and 1, 9 because I don't want to deal with negatives if I don't have to. So it'll be m equals y2 minus y1, which is 9 minus 6, over x2 minus x1, which is 1 minus 0, and that simplifies to a 3 on top, a 1 on bottom, which is 3. Now you do the same thing for g of x. This time I can't avoid negatives. I have to at least go with 1, so I'm going to use 4, negative 1, and 6, comma 2. That would be 2 minus negative 1 over 6 minus 4. That minus a negative becomes a positive. 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 minus 4 is 2. So 3 over 2. Then the third part says, which function has the greater rate of change? Well, to be able to compare these numbers and know which one's greater, you probably need to put the fraction in decimal form. What is 3 over 2 as a decimal? 1.5. So which number's bigger? 3, and it's the f of x. So that. So make sure tomorrow, before you compare, make the fraction answer a decimal so that you really know what you're doing, because a lot of people missed that last year. Okay, we're going to skip number 15 because it's not on the test anyway. Number 16. Write the function for the table below. So they're wanting you to write the function in y equals mx plus b form, or really it should be in f of x because that's what they called the y. Well, to be able to do that, what do you have to know? Okay, how do you find the y-intercept? Correct, it's right there, 0, negative 14, there's your y-intercept. How do you find the slope? You can look at the pattern or you can pick 2 points. What are the x's doing every time? Going up by 2. What are the y's doing every time? They're also going up. So don't you have 2 over 2, which is 1? 2 divided by 2. F of x equals 1x, which you don't really have to write the 1, you can, minus 14. That one I'm pretty sure is free response also. Number 17. No, because if it's free response, I'll give you credit for 2 over 2. Okay, number 17. Describe the pattern in the sequence 27, 30, 33, 36. What's the pattern? Add 3, which eliminates B and C, and after 36 would become 39, then 42, then 45, which is D. Remember, this video will be on the blog, so if you're studying tonight, you can pull it up if you need to. And the video where we went over 18 through 21 is already posted on the blog from yesterday. The test is tomorrow.